There we go. Finally. All right. Okay, let me figure out how to share this link. Where can I do that? I'll probably have to go over to my own page and find where's the freaking thing? Now I can't see it. Why can't I see it? I want to see it so I can share it out. Let's see if I can just copy this one part. Am I live or what? Can anybody even get to it? I don't know if anybody can even see it. All right, let's go over to Gab where I just posted the old thing. All right, so that's going to be HTTPS youtube.com/live/that. Let me see if that actually does it. Okay, I almost got myself in a recursive loop. Go ahead and post that in Timeline Comics. All right. Well, I don't see where anybody can actually find me. Oh, there we go. Cam on, good. Did get the notification. Okay, good. That was the weirdest thing. Yeah, because basically what happened was I started the live stream and I got this big screen that said, if you want to use virtual webcam, then turn on XSplit Broadcaster. With an XSplit Broadcaster, I do use to like record my PowerPoint presentations when I'm giving my reviews and stuff like that. But I never use it for this. So I don't know what the hell was going on here. And then when I rebooted my computer, I was like, let me just reboot my computer. I'll get everything, clear the caches, what have you. I rebooted my computer. It took me like 20 minutes just to reboot. I've got to get a new computer this year. I mean, I can't avoid it anymore because this is going to be like expired. Windows 10 expires next year. So something got fouled up. I don't know. So anyway, I just want to do a quick live stream to let people know what it was I was doing because I know I haven't put out a review video in a while. I've still got Dino King as the next thing up for review, but I haven't gotten to that yet because I've actually been going back and binge reading a whole bunch of my old comic book collection myself. I've been trying to. There are some comics that I've got my eye on. And there is a comic book shop local to me that they'll take stuff from me for trade credit, and then I will buy from them. And they've had a few things in in my want list for a while now, and I wanted to see about how much of my old stuff can I finally get rid of, because every once in a while you got to do a culling. And I went through like all sorts of stuff just from way back. I mean, it's almost embarrassing how many different kinds of comic books I got back in the day. I went through the series like Dynamo 5. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. You probably have not even heard of most of these. Like Dynamo 5 was a series by Jay Farber, set in the same universe. It was set in the Image universe with Invincible and all these others. Arcadia was I think 8-issue series. There was one called Achilles Incorporated. There was another one called Letter 44 by Charles Soule. I decided to keep that one. So not all of these were ones that I read and then decided I was going to get rid of. Some of these were ones that that I read and decided to keep. So what the hell do I have? Do I have some crumbs or something on my shirt or what? So anyway, yeah, I'm wearing one of my shirts of shame that I bought during the Rippaverse's coupon sale. So so I went and I finally went through just about everything that I wanted to read and figure out, okay, do I want to keep this or not, except for two series, and one of them I've got somewhere with me here. Oh, it's over here. There's a 2-volume series about called Daymen, about the guys who work for vampires during the day. And then there's another series called The Unwritten. And that was a pretty famous one back in the day. It was about a guy who basically found out that he was the living incarnation of Harry Potter, basically. So so those were all those are the ones that I've still got to read. And at that point, once I get done with those, then I'll get on to reviewing Dino King. But I've also got a bunch of Avengers Epic collections that I want to read because I need to figure out whether I've found a good stopping point in my collecting Avengers volumes, or whether I need to keep getting more. I've got all the way up through the Korvac saga at this point, and I don't know if I really need to go beyond that, but I am in like the John Byrne Avengers issues. I think Stern and Byrne might have been the ones who were writing at the time, or writing and drawing at the time. And I mean, this is all before I ever jumped onto the Avengers train. I think my Avengers titles started for real with the Under Siege arc, which was where the Masters of Evil took over Avengers headquarters and beat the crap out of Jarvis. So so that was the arc that I really remember getting on board Avengers with, and I stayed with Avengers well past 300, but I don't think I managed to make it to 400. Oh, let's catch up with some of the chats here. You got Baki Xaverists. What's up, Mike? Andrew Rowland. Hey, Meryl the 2005. Cam on, you good? I did get the notification, and Andrew Rowland said same. Meryl 2005 says cash thing probably. It could have been. I don't know. Verbena 208. Yeah, I'm the same way. I had to call my bagged and boarded. I'll call my bagged and boarded recently. Yeah. Back Xavier's. Anyway, yeah, Eric July is just not great and probably won't make anything good for a while, because if people think Ethan Van Sciver giving blowjobs behind the pizza parlor is bad, then Eric July in a documentary is worse. Okay. MD Houghton, too hard on him? Nah. Andrew Rowland referring to my shirts. Shame. MD Houghton, Dayman. He's an expert at karate. Rippaverse Goalpost, Horseman by Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett soon. Yes, that is probably, that to me is like the Rippaverse's last hope, because for one, it has so little to do with Eric July at this point that it may be the one breath of fresh air that the Rippaverse needs to sustain itself. I mean, the thing that's got me so turned off of like Bloodruth is that I know the Saska sisters are writing it, and look what a crap job they did on Yaira. Then you've got what the Sersha is it from Rippaverse or Rippazine, and what the hell happened to the Salvage arc? I mean, I hope this isn't like, I hope this ties in to the Salvage arc at least, because I don't want like just hanging half stories. It's bad enough that we're still waiting for ISOM number 3. You know, I'm really surprised at how long that's been allowed to just sit there. Why would you do? Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's got reasons, but honestly, ISOM number 3 probably should have been completed before anything else. Or at least you should have had ISOM number 1, ISOM number 2, and then Alpha Core and Yaira, and then ISOM number 3, and then Gooding, Horseman, et cetera, et cetera. Because at this point, there are going to be a lot of people who are kind of they're going to look back at ISOM number 1 and number 2 and think, did I really like those enough that I even want to plunk down for ISOM number 3? I don't know that they will. I'm at the point where I've just about lost interest in it, but I mean, my OCD, I'm sure, will carry the day. But I am frustrated not having, ISOM number 3 in hand, just because I want to close the book on that story. It's terrible to have it just dangling like that. Back Xavier's MD Hunt, yep, same energy. Also, Eric July was in a gay documentary called Fagbug Nation, which was made in 2014 by a gay activist named Aaron Davies. It's on YouTube. Okay. Hey, Rippaverse Goalposts, shout out. What even is Joe Bennett? I feel like doing the Drax the Destroyer thing. Why is Joe Bennett? Sir, she is the Lethal Force certified private investigator. Yes, that is the dumbest freaking thing. Oh my God. I did that video on Ripazine number 1, talking about how Lethal Force certification is like the dumbest idea he's come up with yet. I mean, it is exactly, it says it's not a license to kill. That's just a misinterpretation. And then he goes on to explain the Lethal Force certification in exactly such a way that you would explain James Bond's License to Kill. Like, congratulations. You just basically beclowned yourself. Not only that, but it's considering how few people even apply for the license, which takes several years to get. There's no way the government would even allow such a program. It's just a complete waste of money, waste of time. And this is just one of the worst ideas ever. Just to have him be a freaking private detective already. You don't need this Lethal Force certification. That is so garbage. Oh God. Yeah, back Xavier asks, so is that like the CIA Special Activity Division or Delta Force or Blackwater PMC? Yeah, it's just basically you get to use your pistol in pretty much self-defense, or I guess if you need to shoot somebody in order to get at somebody's files, which is, what kind of ass backwards government does that? I mean, that's like, what kind of tin-plated dictator type government does Texas have in the Rippaverse that they would actually allow for that kind of thing? That's insane. Verbena 208, yeah, July's world building is kind of cringe. When it exists at all. Zaid Comics, hope you're feeling better, Mike. Yeah, a little bit. My voice is still a little bit shot, but we'll get there. Baki Xavier says, yeah, 100% on the world building being cringe. Yeah, there's still not nearly enough world building going on, and yet the building that we get is just like, do you really mean that? Really? I mean, somebody was telling me that, it was awesome world building that Solari's exceptionals were mentioned in Gooding. It's like, didn't we already know that from ISOM number 2? Low Watermark with $100 super chat. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Buy the new mic and maybe a new computer. You do great work. You just need a little more tech. Thank you so much. Yes, I will be. I'm going to have to start looking things up, because I know that Cyber Monday comes after Thanksgiving. You have the Black Friday sales, and then you got the Cyber Monday sales, and that's when all the tech stuff goes on sale. And so that's when I will be. Prior to that, I will need to look hard into both a desktop and a laptop computer, because both of mine are Windows 10 and they're going to go out of service next year. So those I definitely that's definitely on the research agenda. and I don't really need much, you know? I kept thinking to myself, I was actually in Best Buy the other day and I was looking around at the various things. The only thing that kind of bums me out is the fact that you don't get a lot of like desktop computers today that have like all of the front end gadgetry, like a DVD ROM that's directly inserted in it. And you can get all these things as attachments. I know, but I just kind of liked having everything be in the computer where you didn't have to like buy all of the accompaniments. And I thought about getting maybe some Alienware desktop, and then I thought to myself, it's been 10 years, both on the desktop side and on the laptop side, 10 years since I bought new computers. I mean, any graphics card I get today is probably going to be better than the graphics cards that I got in those 10-year-old machines. I can't imagine that the technology is anywhere near the same as what I have now. And even though I've got an Alienware that had, some top of the line stuff at the time, but it's 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I mean, there's no way that, my getting even a bottom barrel Alienware laptop or even a Dell laptop or something. I just want to make sure it's the right size, because I was actually contemplating switching to Apple, but one of the things I found out is that Apple only does like 16-inch laptops, and this is a 17-inch laptop I've got here, and I don't want to get anything smaller than that. I don't know. I'm gonna have to find some company that still does the 17-inch laptops. I think Dell still does. I think there's probably others that still do, but anyway, let's see. Andy R. Hello, Mike. LT. I normally align with July on politics, yet I don't have that level of paranoia around government. Andy R. says, I see you're wearing your garments of shame. I am wearing my garments of shame. I'm also wearing a Comicsgate hat, and I'm trying to make sure the two don't touch so you don't get a matter-antimatter reaction. Rippaverse Goldverse, maybe Flora Spark doesn't have a Second Amendment. Jesus H. Christ, can you imagine? If Flora Spark did not allow people to own guns, that would be like the complete inversion of Eric July's values there. Because he's going to have guns to air out Riley. That would explain the value in lethal force certification, although there isn't much competition for it. Urbana 208 says he could probably do more if he used narration boxes more liberally. Yes, like when you've got a whole front page of your book, page 1, and all you're showing is your police station with the flower shop next door and a couple of cars and a whole bunch of pedestrians, maybe use some of that real estate and throw down some caption boxes that explain what your world looks like. Yeah, one of these days, I will get around to going back through ISOM number 1 and basically fanficking it into something that, it's halfway decent, because there are ways to utilize those pages to do the world building that he should have done in the first place. Let's see. LT, Best Buy is depressing. I used to love browsing movies, and now it's basically a single spin rack. Yeah, way back in the day, Best Buy was like the go-to store if you wanted to look at video games, if you wanted to look at CDs, if you wanted to look at computers, if you wanted to look at televisions and all those different kinds of things. And then it's almost like they went to the half cubicle kind of thing because they used to have aisles and rows and you could get lost in the place. And now it's like you look and it's like this flat expanse of these bright white tables and, everybody can see everything. And I wonder if they did that more for security than they did for actually needing the space in that way, because that way they could look and, you could practically see across the whole place if somebody's like trying to sneak something out inside their shirt. Let's see. Andrew Rowland, $2 says, have you seen the insanity that is the veto drama? I don't know much about that. I don't watch Biggest Problem in the Universe, and because they just kind of screech at each other the whole time. I do know that like Mint Salad and Riley are like piling up on dog piling on Vito, and Riley's doing his usual shtick of threatening to come and do something as far as to Vito's house or something. Um, you think that guy's already in enough trouble? He would know better than to do that kind of stuff. I don't understand when you've got when you're already dealing with a court case looming before you, how you go through. But maybe he's doing that to show, oh, I do this to everybody, and it's not serious. Who knows? Hmm. LMAE says hello. Andrew Rowland says Alienware is mostly for gamers. That is true. And I did get this laptop back in the day thinking I was going to game on it, but I actually never did. And I don't game. I don't. The only gaming that I generally do is watching other people play games. Like for example, The Last of Us. I just started watching a walkthrough. It's like an 11-hour walkthrough of that game, and it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting to see that. I could see how you could kind of get into it, but I just don't have the time. I like to I like video game stories, but I don't have the time to go through those again and try to figure out. You know, the only one that I really want to play, or there's actually two that I want to play. One is Star Wars: The Old Republic, and I do have that. Not Knights of the Old Republic, but just the Old Republic, the MMORPG. I'm kind of enjoying that, and I haven't gotten very far in it though. I mean, I'm still on one of the first couple of worlds that you go to, and then there's the Star Trek MMORPG, and I tried playing that back in the day, but I could never figure out how to get my starship to either land or orbit a particular world. And I didn't know anybody who was playing the game, so I just didn't really know what I was doing. Uh, so those were that's really the only gaming I did. So I figured if I get a desktop that has a decent graphics card, that's going to be all the graphics I need for what little I'm going to be doing with it. And then my laptop doesn't even need that kind of graphics except to do the podcasting and the video processing and stuff like that. So I think I'm probably just going to look online and see what constitutes best podcasting laptop, and what constitutes just best all around desktop usage, and just get something cheap enough where if I don't like it, and I know and I can discern from that what it is that I actually want to get, then I can buy up from there. But I don't have to spend a lot of money to get what I need for just my own personal use. That there's just not that much drive for it. But thank you for the $2, Andrew, on that. Let's see what we got. Maryland 2000. Today's consumer tech is geared for everything online. Yeah, that is true. NMI trading. What do you think is causing the quality issues the most with Rippaverse? Lack of vision, bland characters, talent level of writers, or Rippaverse team lacks joy in what they do. Ironically, it feels corporate. Let me think about that for a second. Honestly, I really feel like it boils down to the editing, because, and this is kind of going to play into some of my topic today, is that some of the same problems that plague the Rippaverse plague other independent comics creators too, such as Comicsgate. You wind up looking at some of these Comicsgate books and you realize that some of the problems are exactly the same. And they could be exactly the same in some of the weirdest ways. It's like I'm not expecting to open up Inglorious Rex #1 and see one of the same problems that has been drilled by Ethan Van Sciver into ISOM #1, and yet there it is. It's like, well, wait a minute. I thought you had the champions of comics over here, who aren't going to make those kinds of mistakes, and at the same time, you've got you've got the actual same mistakes in the books. So the lack of editing and the lack of skilled editors to whom people can come and say, here, look at my stuff and see what I can do to improve it. That's actually a niche that needs filling in the independent comic space. And one thing that I would like to do in the future is see if I can set up a company, starting with me, and saying, okay, if I offer my services to comic book creators who need somebody to give them feedback, can I make a go of that? That'd be something that I think it would be interesting to try, because I don't see a lot of. I mean, I'm sure that they all hand their stuff out among one another and say, hey, can you take a look at my book and see if there's anything that you find wrong with it, or anything that I can touch up or make better. But how many of them have either the time to really look at it like that, or have the skills necessary to be the critical reader of a comic, as opposed to somebody who's just gonna give it a cursory read and say, yeah, it looks good enough. Because that's kind of the input that Ethan Van Sciver initially gave to Eric July was, hey, this is good enough. You'll do all right with this. But all the while thinking, it's like, I don't know if he really has his head on straight about any of this. So there's also that. There's also the fact that all of these people are trying to go around promoting their comics. So how can they really go around critiquing their comics? You could already see Ethan Van Sciver's reluctance to address Gooding, the polymath. I don't think he's done that review yet, and I've already got 3 or 4 videos on it. So you need people who are objective and who have been in the comic book space reading these things for years on end, who can say, this is what I think is wrong with the book. And I think there's a total lack of that in all of independent comics at this point. LT says, Rippaverse to me is suffering from bad editing and a lack of vision. They don't seem to know what story they want to tell. A random demon invasion isn't interesting. Yeah, one of the things that I really felt was that, Eric July talked about how he's got a Rippaverse Bible. I really feel like that Bible is more like a chick tract. There's not a lot to that thing. Just the fact that he could hand off Alpha Core to Chuck Dixon and get an entirely different set of characters in Alpha Core, meaning the Alpha Core, and also the villains too, Lillian Renashi and Michael Copper, and just get a completely different tone. It was almost as if Chuck Dixon didn't go back to read anything that Eric July had done previously on it. It was just like, you don't even need to know that. Did Chuck Dixon even have copies of ISOM #1 and ISOM #2 to work from when he wrote Alpha Core #1? I almost wonder whether he did, because when you see how Solari and Valdez interrelate, and especially when you see them interrelating in Yaira #1, it's like, who the hell are these characters? I finished reading Alpha Core #1. You go from Alpha Core #1 over to Yaira #1, and it's like, who the hell is writing any of this? Because it doesn't seem like they're the same characters at all. It reminds me of, and I think I've mentioned this before, there was a series back in the day. It was a fantasy series called Outcasts, and each book would be written by a different writer, and it worked for a while. It worked for about 4 or 5 books, and then on the last book that I read, you could tell that the person who read that didn't read any of the previous books, because this guy portrayed the elf in the story, who was a dark elf, who was a brooding character, practically portrayed him like a leprechaun elf, and was singing merry songs and stuff like that. It was ridiculous. And that is the feeling I get when I read the Rippaverse, is like they're not reading each other's work to see what these characters are supposed to sound like, or who these characters are, or what these characters are supposed to act like. I don't feel like, I mean, look at what was it Mike Barron said? It's like Gooding didn't even have a first name until Mike Barron gave him one. And I'm sure there's a lot of gaps in the Rippaverse where it's just, Eric's is giving him this skeleton of idea and saying, go ahead and play. That's that. I mean, I've had an idea for a comic book universe in my head for like 2 decades now, and it's not something that I've ever really thought of seriously about bringing to fruition. But I at least have general ideas of who the characters are and what their motivations are. I at least have an idea of where the first stories some of them might go through actually takes them to. But I feel like Eric didn't even put that much together. I think he just felt like, well, I'll just hand these characters off and let other people run with it, which is not wrong. I mean, it's not wrong for him to do that. But at the same time, it doesn't speak to the level of planning that he tries to pass off, as if I've had these thoughts for a long time, and here I'm finally bringing these ideas to fruition. And then when you see the extent of the ideas, you don't actually get much in the way of product. NMI Trading, or you can feel Eric July and company are just not having fun. I mean, I don't know. I don't try to ascribe to them, what they're feeling. It's just the thing that they're not communicating to me. I know I'm not having fun. I know I'm the one who's supposed to be having fun here. I am not having fun. Yeah, reading Gooding the Polymath was not a good experience for me. Back Xavier says that it's a lot worse. It's a lot worse than DC and Marvel. I have just about absolutely lost interest in DC and Marvel at this point. The Flash is the only title I'm going to try. I'm going to give another try, and at that point, I'm probably just done with DC altogether. Marvel, I'm pretty much the same way. I mean, the fact that they took X-Men in such a wild direction for as long as they did, and now they've kind of hit the reset button, and I don't actually know where they are anymore in terms of that. You almost managed to pull off No More Mutants again by just shunting all of these mutants into the white hot room where the Phoenix dwells. And I don't know what the current status quo of the X-Men is, but they've been through so many changes that I just don't care anymore. And that's the same thing that goes for Spider-Man, for Captain America, for the Hulk, for all of these different long-standing properties of Marvel and DC and all that. They've gone through so many iterations that I just don't care anymore. The basic characters have been lost, and now all you've got is, what are they going to do next? What's the next brand new hoop that they're going to have one of these superheroes jump through? How many times is Daredevil going to have his identity revealed and then put back in the box? How many times is Spider-Man going to go off and do something new and exciting and then come back to being a photographer for the Daily Bugle? It's like I don't like the rubber banding of characters where you let them go out of their comfort zone, but you got to suck them right back in. I mean, it's just tired. The whole Marvel universe is tired. I don't know why they don't just reboot the universe and make it more in tune with what the movies are. You think they would probably make a lot more money if they did that, even if they outrage the fans. But then again, now they have to actually make movies that are worth a damn again, and that is not happening yet. Although I did like the Marvels more than I thought I would. Andrew Rowland said, I don't like how Riley is being treated in Comicsgate. He's hailed as a hero when he's just an obnoxious, attention-starved, jabbering little prick. His troll humor is not funny to me and just stupid. Yeah. Verbena 208, you can tell Eric is a child of 90s comics. His comics suffer from most of the same issues. Backing Xaverus says, I'm somewhat of a newcomer. I've collected the modern comics and some old comics. I think I would know comics more than Eric July. And I think I would comics more than Eric July would ever know. Verbena 208 says to Backing Xaverus, most likely. LT said, it just reminded me of that parody book, Atlanta Nights. Haven't seen that one. Biff Bam Boom Comics. Hello, Mike. I owe you a look at Cody Valiant #1. Don't let me forget that. That is one that I was gonna look at. I was gonna try and look at it this weekend, and too many things just got in the way. So I will be taking a look at that, and also I think that's the only thing. I think that's the only thing that's still on the plate, or actually Cody Valiant 0 plus the Origin, and I don't think I've read the Origin. So I need to take a look at both of those. But yeah, I haven't forgotten you there. NMI Trading. So according to your expertise, do you think with the current characters and story, Rippaverse trying to tell it can be successful if it just had a competent editing team? Let me think about that for a second. I think there's so much room for improvement that if you got them an editor that was worth a darn, then yes, you could probably improve the Rippaverse storytelling enough that because the artwork's really not the problem there. I would say that the storytelling issues, if you could clear up a lot of the technical issues, get them to write coherent dialogue, get them to really think about their character motivations, get them to make sure that their plots don't go completely off the rails. And that even goes in for the case of veteran writers like Chuck Dixon. I mean, one of the things that I still do not understand to this day is how is it that Lillian Renashi is doing her level best to make sure that attention is focused somewhere other than herself and Michael Copper. And the way she does this is to put a disc in a safety deposit box that causes the freaking Alpha Corps headquarters to fall out of the sky. That's not a way to stop from drawing attention to yourself. That is a way to make sure every freaking resource that the government has is targeted towards finding out who you are. It was just something that made no sense. Let's see what we got here. I will make sure to get to the super chats in just a second. And Becky Xavier says the absolute universe is good. The absolute universe is good, but doesn't hold up too well. Now, when you're saying the absolute universe, is that a different comic book universe, or are we talking about the Rippaverse still? I don't know what that meant. Walter Howard, current Hulk run is pretty good. I wouldn't know. I don't even touch that one. I may have to take a look at it because I just. After, who was it? Was it Donny Cates? Donny Cates did the Starship Hulk run and just kind of left it hanging. I don't even know if they really understood who Titan was. And then it seemed like Titan was the Hulk of the Hulk, but Rick Remender already did that with Claw in Axis. So I don't know. That's one of the things is like they all want to take these characters so far out of their comfort zones, and then they want to just stuff the concept right back into the same box it's been in. And now Bruce Banner has long hair for some reason. I don't even freaking know. LT comics are fundamentally afraid of story development. They turn to big dour sitcoms. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, there's so many ways in which these stories have just gone so far afield that especially by new writers wanting to come on board and make their mark, that you sometimes they leave the book in an almost unrecognizable state, and then the next writer has to come along and like, okay, great, I thought I was going to have one set of tools, and now I have a totally different set of tools. I wonder how many people want to write or still want to write Batman now that Alfred's out of the game. How many people were just kind of wishing they had the ability to put something smart in Alfred's mouth, and now dude's dead. So Honorary A says, would you ever review any of the Universal monster comics? Universal seems to be reviving these characters in its movies, haunted houses, and TV shows. Would monster comics scratch a big enough itch? I don't know. What company are they coming back under? I mean, do they have their own publishing company? I don't. I'm not familiar with those. I mean, there's always like some vampire books, some Invisible Man books, some werewolf books that are going on out there, but I didn't know if they were. I know they tried to bring back the Dark Universe with Tom Cruise as the Mummy. I mean, that was, oh God. I mean, Brendan Fraser. I mean, he's an Academy Award winning actor now with The Whale, but I always wanted to ask him if I had the chance to see him at a convention. What is it like to have your franchise remade by Tom Cruise, and yet your franchise is still the best? What is that like? Tom Cruise couldn't even do a better job than you and all these others did. And Honorary A would scratch the itch of comic book readers today. Don't know. And thank you for the $10 super chat. And for $30, Andy R says, Mike is comic editing's best kept secret. Thanks for helping with Cargo. Keep reviewing indie books. Love the shop talk, even if it's Eric July's endlessly dissected crap. Yeah. Well, I'm still waiting for Ethan Van Sciver to dissect Gooding, but yeah, Cargo. I'm enjoying Cargo, and I hope the advice I gave for issue 3, which you sent me the script to read, I hope that helps some. Let's see. Let's. YouTube is saying, let's celebrate Mike's 5th super chat on a live stream. Yes, thank you all so much. Becky Xavier says, especially in DC Comics, Resistance Publishing. I seriously think that Eric doesn't even know the direction his universe is supposed to go. That's why he handed responsibility to each new book off to different creators on those books. Yeah, there isn't much of a direction among them. I think probably for Alpha Core, he said, okay, here's Michael Copper, here's Lillian Renashi, and so they're going to be the villains for Alpha Core, and now, do whatever. And sometimes that doesn't give you a whole lot to work with. Like one of the things that I've been doing lately is I've entered into these story contests where they at least seed you with a genre, an action, and a word, and they basically say you have to adhere to those. As long as your short story adheres to all of those, it's good for the contest. And then you have to really start thinking about, okay, well, how is it that I'm going to fit these particular things together when this is not the kind of stuff that I'm used to reading or writing at all. The last story that I did was a romantic comedy, and it has to be 500 words, and it has to involve cradling and a beanie. I was completely at a loss when I was doing that. I finally just had to start writing something, anything. It's like let's just have 2 people on a date or something. And as I'm doing that, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I could bring this into play. Oh yeah, I remember this happened to me once, and I'll bring that into play. And oh, wouldn't it be funny if we did this and so, and then you could finally put all that kind of stuff together. But it's nice to have those kinds of seeds so that you can look at those and say, okay, how do I make this grow? So if Eric had more of an idea for what his characters were supposed to be and do, then that would probably give the people to whom he keeps handing stuff off to more fertile ground in which to grow the ideas. But as things are, I mean, I just don't think there's enough there. I mean, God only knows what ISOM number 3 is going to look like. I mean, ISOM number 2 was such a scattershot piece of crap that I, I'm just like, who who are all these characters going to end up being by the time that book is done? I just don't even know. Merilith 2005, maybe she expected them to think she was trolling. I'm not sure what that was in reference to. Back Xavierus, yeah, I don't think Eric will make any of his characters better at all. NMI Trading, I'm a huge fan of the Universal Monsters, and Universal Studios is building a Dark Universe theme park. Looks amazing. Yeah, so far, I think the only things that they've made in the way of actually adapting the characters was you had the Mummy with Tom Cruise. The Invisible Man, I think, was supposed to be the next one. And then Jekyll and Hyde was featured in The Mummy as well, as played by Russell Crowe. And I don't know if I cared that much for his performance of that. It seemed a little bit, too basic. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where they have to go with that. Are they doing the Creature from the Black Lagoon next? Is that what they're supposed to be doing? I just seem to remember hearing that at one point. What else we got? Resistance Publishing. The characters all read different in each book. Each book doesn't have a definite or definitive overall direction when it comes to the Rippaverse. Yep, that is true. The Real Nerdy Review. Now we can see you. Yeah. Well, I hope you've been able to see me for a while now at this point, because I've been going for about 45 minutes, and I haven't even touched the main topic that I was going to talk about. Verbena 208. He's trying to connect his characters too early rather than let those connections form organically. The in media res approach usually has that problem because you're playing catch up for the reader. Yeah, I don't really see, with the exception of ISOM number 1, which literally had, ISOM and Yaira colliding in midair, and Alpha Core chasing Yaira. I don't know that there was too much. I mean, well, Yaira number 1, yes, they do interact quite a bit, Alpha Core and Yaira, but I think they kind of had to at that point because they were trying to establish her being in Florspark and kind of elaborating on that. That was kind of the starting point for the Yaira book. Although I still feel like we don't know what she was doing in Florspark for those 2 weeks before, other than maybe getting that job over at Projexis. Let's see. Honorary A, as a UO team member and former Monsters Scare actor, I can say that I'm super hyped for Dark Universe at Epic Universe. A UO team member and former Monsters Scare actor. So did you have to? You were like at a theme park or something, and you're one of the monsters that has to jump out at people like in the rides, or I don't know what that is. Maryland 2005 says Alfred's gone. What the hell? You didn't know that? Oh, yeah. Bane killed Alfred, basically broke his neck right in front of Robin, all the way back in, I think it was the Joker War or something like that. And the only good thing that came out of that I remember was there was a scene where the Joker had reanimated Alfred's corpse and made Alfred's corpse attack Batman. And at one point, Batman's restraining Alfred, and Alfred's like, "I wish I was Aquaman's butler." That was a really good line. NMI Trading says, sorry to ask something completely off the topic, but in my opinion, in terms of world building, people need to study J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter, or J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter universe. It's, dare I say, Tolkien light. Are you a fan of Harry Potter? I definitely was at the time that I was reading it. my ex-girlfriend had gotten me interested in Harry Potter just because she had read it. And so I went to a bookstore. I think I was in the airport, I want to say. And I looked, and there was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone up on the shelf, and I started thumbing through the first few pages of it. And the thing I liked about it was the fact that by chapter 2, you just hate the Dursleys so much that you want to see Harry Potter, succeed and thrive and whatnot. So you're already on his side by that point, and to get no magic, no real magic had happened by that point, and so to see how well she could craft that little that much connection in just 2 chapters where you didn't even have the main thing about magic coming into play. That was pretty amazing to me, and that got me invested in the books. And so I was lucky in that I actually read all 7 books one after another. I got into Harry Potter so late that by the time I started, they were starting to. I think they were starting to take orders for Deathly Hallows, and so I was able to read through Harry Potter, all the books 1 through 6, all the way through, and then I think I had to wait maybe a week or two for Deathly Hallows to come in, and then I read that. So, so yeah, I mean, back in the day, I didn't care so much for the movies because how could you fit as much as was in the books into the movies? It's kind of the same problem that you have with any kinds of adaptations. Um, but yeah, the Harry Potter books were really good. I think the only thing that I kind of got left hanging on, because one of the things that I really really appreciate is when a writer makes sure that all of the loose ends are tied up. And Rowling made sure that basically all of the loose ends were tied up. There was a little bit of a question for me about, when um well, I don't want to say too much about the end of Deathly Hallows. There was a part in there where I felt like, okay, what is this supposed to represent here? But I think I wound up reading a newspaper article where they kind of explained it, and I was like, okay, good enough. I think I kind of figured that part out for myself. Let's see. Oh, okay. Backing Xavier was talking about the DC Comics Absolute Universe, which is basically the DC version of Marvel's Ultimate Universe. I just don't even have an interest in that. I really I know that's supposed to be where Dark Side kind of reboots the DC universe and makes it according to his own will or something like that, and I have no interest in it. It's just why bother? Andrew Rowland says, speaking of Universal Monsters, there was a trailer for Wolfman recently. Okay, well, maybe they're bringing that back. Andy R., I'm generally curious why everyone is so interested in Eric July's universe when there are so many great comics by the indies out there. Yeah, but they're not making millions of dollars. I mean, that's the main thing, is like, are they making hundreds of thousands of dollars? Generally speaking, Ethan Van Sciver is able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most everybody else is making in the very low hundreds of thousands of dollars, if they even reach that. So it's the money. It's the fact that he has consistently been able to bring in $1 million campaigns, starting with multi-million-dollar campaigns, but then tapering off into $1 million campaigns, and now he's got enough of a base, you might say, that he will probably continue to pull in that kind of money for quite some time. Because think of this: the fact that he's got 6,000 issues of 6,000 books sold as far as the Ripazine goes. Now, the problem with that is that you don't know how many purchasers that is, and how many actual fans are involved in that. I mean, like, because I bought the $20 version of the Ripazine #2, and number one. I prefer the collector's edition covers. And uh, if you can have just a few thousand people who are regularly going to put money in your pocket, you can sustain a business. I think he'll probably still have to kind of shrink things down some, but that depends on how things go from here. I don't know. I mean, maybe if Horseman does really well, or Bloodruth does really well, then you can wind up seeing even an expansion of how things go. Let's see. Honorary A. So yeah, Eric July is the big cheese right now. Um, it's like it's so off track. Honorary A says, I believe Image is cooperating with NBC Universal to publish these comics. Would you ever review these, or are you strictly indie? I mean, I would, I could. I mean, right now I don't really have the whoops. Let's see here. My computer threw a shoe for a moment, so I stuttered there. Right now, I don't have that kind of interest in those, mainly because it's more interesting to look at the creators who are out there, and kind of more pump them up. Because I mean, it does get more eyes on people's books when I do a review of one of these things. If 700 people have watched my review of Inglorious Rex #1, then that's 700 people who I don't know if they were previously aware of it, or if some of them are just coming to it for the first time. It could be either way. So I kind of like to look at the stuff that's out there, especially if it's stuff that's being judged harshly. For example, of course, John Delarose is getting a hell of a lot of criticism of late, on account of the crap that he's been dumping on Ethan Van Sciver. And so I'm looking at his stuff and I'm thinking to myself, well, I can review things that he's done. And so I went ahead and I backed his latest campaign. So I'll be looking at some of his Terran Imperative stuff. I think that's what it's called, the Terran Imperative. And I'll see if that is the Star Wars replacement that he thinks it is. And also, I think I'm going to get a Flying Sparks Volume 1 PDF file as a result of that too, which is good because I did a preview, or I did a review of the preview of Flying Sparks #1, but I did not get a chance to read the whole volume because at that point I really didn't want to buy it. But it's supposed to come free of charge with having backed this latest his latest properties, and so we'll see how that looks. While I'm on that topic of various independent artists and things out in the independent space, I do have to say this. I know one of the people who is like the bane of Ethan Van Sciver's existence is Mike S. Miller, or Smiller as he likes to call him. I recently I had the first 2 volumes of the 3 volumes of Game of Thrones prequels that Mike S. Miller drew for George R. R. Martin, the adaptations of some of the early stories from Fire and Blood, I think. I don't know if it was actually adaptations from that or if George R. R. Martin actually just wrote new stories for these comics, but it was the Hedge Knight, Hedge Knight 2, The Sworn Sword, and Hedge Knight 3, The Mystery Knight. And I had the opportunity to go through all of those. And let me tell you something. Mike S. Miller is actually pretty good at this. Now, I don't know about his writing, but as far as his art goes, he can make really boring scenes stand out. I mean, you have a lot of scenes in George R. R. Martin stuff where you got people sitting around a campfire, people sitting around a table, people standing around, people just, walking and talking past a whole bunch of other people. Maybe you'll see a jousting match or something like that. But honest to God, I'm looking at the art in these books, and I'm just able to, flip through, read through casually, not have a problem telling one character from another, not have a problem telling what's on the characters' minds from their facial expressions. Um, Honestly, it wasn't until there were certain points at which he actually had to involve the characters in one-on-one action that I feel like some of his art started to fall apart a little. Um, and again, these books were done several years ago, so I have no idea how his skills may have improved since then. But I was really impressed by what I saw Mike S. Miller delivering, and in terms of the artwork, because he was able to take stuff that really would be difficult for an artist to try and draw in an interesting way and keep the reader's attention, and there was just no problem with that throughout. So I know Ethan Van Sciver hates the guy, and I'm sure the feeling is mutual, but there's talent on both ends of the spectrum there. um, I just have to give that shout out, because I was impressed with what I saw. It was impressive enough that if I were to come across a cheap copy of his, Lone Star Heart of a Hero, I would pick it up, and then I would judge it for myself as to whether it was any good. Um, I saw Ethan Van Sciver's, he went through and he was criticizing stuff here and there. At this point, I would not mind, to having a look for myself, and maybe someday in the future I will go ahead and pick those up. All right, let's see what else. What else we got here? Honorary A says, I've found the Rippaverse to be entertaining and engaging thus far, but I do appreciate Mike's takes on things. Resistance Publishing says, Eric should hire Mike as editor, but Eric is too stubborn to listen to anyone who he doesn't see any value in. And I guess at this point, I probably should start talking about what I originally came to talk about. It's only been, what, an hour? Oh my God. Um, let's see if I can run through the rest of these regular chats, and then get to my main topic. LT says, Eric July has a fairly good eye for good comics. That led to the assumption that he could also write good comics. I thought the same. It turns out criticism and creativity aren't related skills. Yeah, it is interesting how skill sets differ, and the fact that he was able to review all of these different properties and be in tune with so many people, and appeal to them on his live streams and in his videos. That's one thing. Now, yeah, as it happens, you have to know what it is you're doing on the writing side too, on the actual creative side, in order to produce a good comic. And some of that's still a work in progress. Let's see. Back Xavier says, if he can take Mike seriously, but I don't know if that would happen. Probably not. Let's see. Biff Bam Boom says, just drop the box for the finished version of Cody Valiant one for me to check out. Oh, okay. Yeah, I will check and see if check the Dropbox for the updated copy. Oh, Andy R says, I could understand if he had an audience that believed he would genuinely make good comics. They would feel very confused right now. Yep. Let's see. Resistance Publishing says, Mike's a good editor. He edited 2 of my upcoming graphic novels. Thanks, Mike. Which ones of those did I do for you? I cannot. Oh, gosh. I think I remember one of them. But I don't remember the. Oh, wait, no. Was it Iron Knight, and then the other one was the one that was set more in the future? Yeah, I swear some of these things are starting to blur now. Andy R, I'm not sure if I'm biased because I've never heard of him, but just looking at the projects from the outside, I could just tell that they were kind of mediocre. If that's a reference to Eric July. So I don't know. I mean, when I looked at the preview art for ISOM #1, I looked at it and I said, yeah, this is gonna work art wise. I mean, I can see a little bit of, fight choreography gone wrong already, but not in such a way that it's catastrophic. It's kind of the usual stuff that we see when, there's a whole bunch of people attacking one guy, and then you realize, oh, well, wait a minute, or should he be coming in from this side or from that side, or this guy just kicks him in that direction, so shouldn't he still be in that direction? You see those kinds of little mess ups. But what I really wanted to see at the time was the writing. I wanted to see what Eric July was writing into these characters' mouths. And when I finally got a chance to see that, I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't really understand why it is that Santuan is talking about, the fact that accepts are all labeled the same way, and therefore they're made to seem like they're all equal to each other when really some are more powerful than others, et cetera, et cetera. But it's enough that it piques my interest, so I decided to give it a shot at that point. And then wound up being disappointed later on. Did I read Ripazine #1? Or Cowboy Bebop is asking, did I read Ripazine #1? In my opinion, Eric July's writing is slightly better in the salvage story. Yeah, not really. Yeah, I did read Ripazine #1. I do have a video up on that, so feel free to go back and watch that. I'm just not really impressed with this whole lethal force private detective crap. It's it's unnecessary. If you don't need that kind of gimmick to make your character interesting. LT says, I was an early backer. I dipped after Yaira. He got his honest chance, and I'm disappointed. Yeah, I mean, I dipped after Yaira. I dipped after every damn book, honestly. The one that just broke me was Gooding. I mean, at that point, I was just kind of like, no, I'm pretty much done now. Let's see. Mike Partika says, Honorary A says, to me, every year we do Halloween Horror Nights here at the Universal Orlando Resort. And last year I was Mr. Hyde at the Haunted House Universal Monsters Unmasked. Well, good for you. Cowboy Bebop. If I recall correctly, Alfred died during City of Bane. Okay, that's probably correct. Andy R. Lackadaisy Cats. Paranatural, Dead Winter, all of Von Kloss's books, Kill 6 Billion Demons, all amazing comics that deserve attention. I wish more people reviewed those. They are long, though. Well, they just got a shout out now. Honorary Ace is kind of happy that Bane got that huge win. Verbena 208, I love Dead Winter, highly underrated. Andy R says, I'm glad someone else has read it. Best character-driven zombie webcomic ever. I've been reading since high school. And I'm 32. Yeah, you're probably familiar with Berserk then, too. I love Black Monday Blues as a character. That was by Verbena 208. Honorary A said, will you be willing to allow for somebody to purchase you the Universal Monster books to review? Hold off on that until I've got my deck cleared. But thank you for the offer as far as that goes. And one of the things that I could always do in the future also is do a live stream and just basically say, hey, here's what's on the docket. And if you actually want to see me do it, then send some super chat money my way. Andy R says you have good taste. I spoke to the creator of, I guess that's of Dead Winter. She still makes it, but definitely feels scorned because it never caught on. Back Xavier says Jade John Delarose, aka Wife Beater, should just go. Verbena 208 says, yeah, that's sad. I always thought it had great writing. They're probably talking about Dead Winter still. Andy R replies, it does. I loved how Alice had her two. Okay, I'm not going to read that one because I don't know how much of that is going to be spoilers. Let's see. Mr. DJ Fly, hi. Excuse me. Oh, God, my voice is giving out, and I never actually got around to my topic. Hey, Mike, have you seen actual fandom stream on how to deplatform rival YouTubers, which included targeted harassment? Now, I don't pay attention to actual fandom or any of the any of the other side of the line, really. They just don't interest me. Cowboy Bebop, actual fandom thinks that destigmatizing pedophilia will help children not be abused by predators. Yeah, I've heard. It kind of reminds me of what is it? Was it Alan Moore who said that in Sweden there's a lot of there's a lot more erotica involving the younger sorts, and that he thinks that's somehow tied to a decrease on account of the PDFers being able to get rid of their urges via other means. I'm no scientist, and that's not the kind of stuff that you can really do much in the way of science on, really, on in any kind of ethical way, because how are you going to do that? I mean, unless you're going to like use AI to produce, the kind of porn that would satisfy them, and then it'd all be fictional porn. But does that mean that they're not going to? Who would even sign up for a study like that? I mean, my God, talk about being self-revelatory at that point. Yeah, there are some things that you just scientifically cannot experiment with, and the sad thing is that society today, there's so much experimentation going on children in alternate family structures, quote unquote, that God knows what kind of harm we're doing, and how much suppression goes on in even allowing it to be called harm. But anyway, back to the topics. Andrew Rowland says King of Justice #2 is more than halfway done, and hopefully and hope you'll still be interested enough to buy a digital copy and review it. Did I buy the last digital copy, or did you just send me one? I don't know. Yeah, I think as far as because that one was the one that I put at a 5.5, and I said that this is kind of like right on the cusp of being one of those. I would like to see where that one does go. Resistance Publishing, Mike, you edited Iron Knight and Arkham Rising backup story. Yes, okay. Lackadaisy Cats is really good, says LMAE, and Andrew Rowland, I just sent you a free copy. Okay. All right, so now that we are 1 hour and 10 minutes into the live stream, let me start talking about the thing I was actually going to start talking about, or the reason I had it to begin with. Well, part of it was to inform people what it was that I was currently reading, which was a lot of my own back catalog material in terms of all the stuff that I already own, but I wanted to see, am I ready to get rid of this or not? So I already covered that topic. But yeah, Andy R says, Mike, you're getting your sea legs with this live streaming stuff. Yeah, it didn't help that that I had to reboot for the first portion of it. Oh, so let me take a moment to collect myself and try and think what was it I was going to talk about again? Oh yeah, were we being too hard on Eric July back in the day? How responsible are we for the monster that he has since become? And the reason I thought about that was it was twofold. One is I started writing these short stories for contests, and part of the process is once I was done with the short story, I wanted to have some of my friends read and review it before I submitted it. And there would be times when my friends would give me input, and I would be just like, "Are you kidding me? Like what are you even talking about? That wasn't a problem. There's no problem in that. There's nothing wrong with that part. I don't even know why you're bringing that part up. There's no reason why that's a problem." And then, like an hour later, I'd be thinking about it, and I think to myself, yeah, that actually was a problem, wasn't it? And I need to go and change something about the story. and it would be things that was like completely out of left field. It's like I had no idea that I'm writing about these characters, but I never really gave an impression of what their ages are, and maybe that would give a bad taste in someone's mouth if they thought that the ages were too young for the kind of activities that were involved in there. And it's like I'm looking at that like, no, I mean, there's no way that. And then I thought, yeah, maybe there could be. And so what I noticed was that when I was receiving criticism for the stories that I was writing, I had this feeling of initial pushback of basically saying, no, there's that's not a problem. That's not something that's going to be anything that hurts the story. People are going to understand that. I mean, that's just somehow you had a problem. Somehow you slipped, you know. And then I thought to myself, and I'm thinking, doesn't that sound like somebody we know? doesn't that just sound like somebody who we've all had some experience with, seeing his reactions to criticism? Like, wait a minute, I think I find myself doing the same things. And the next thing that happened was that I put out my review for Inglorious Rex #1, and then I happened to be on I was in the chat of one of Shane Davis's live streams, and he talked about something about there's not a lot of filler in Inglorious Rex #1, and I remarked that it actually needed some, because some of the fight stuff that happens like towards the very beginning of the book really needed to be fleshed out more. And suddenly I find myself in a conversation in the chat with his wife, Yanzi Lin, and she's pushing back on my critique of Inglorious Rex #1 and those pages. And I'm basically telling her that, okay, for one thing, the splash page, and I probably got it somewhere down here. Do I have that somewhere? Where have I got that? Oh, let me see. Hold on a second. Yeah, here we go. So here is this is my shredded copy, which is unfortunately was signed. So you got the first page of Inglorious Rex #1 right here, and then you've got a splash page, full page splash page of nothing but this guy's face, and this guy's face, the main character's face, and his trainer, and little captions going on. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this did not need to be a splash page. Especially when the next page shows the conclusion of the fight, and it's like you see him looking real hard, and then all of a sudden, whoa, one kick and the fight's over. Done. Okay. Where's the excitement? Where's the suspense? Where's the tension? You wasted an entire page where this scene could have been shrunk down to like a quarter of the page, and then we could have gotten 3 more panels of either punching or kicking or even just analyzing the other guy's moves so that he finds the opening and then he lands the kick and wins. And she was pushing back on me so hard. There was even one point where she said, well, maybe what you need is an ESPN subscription. I'm like, what? I need what kind of crap is this? What are you trying to say here? Are you trying to say that I need to educate myself more on what MMA looks like, or what kickboxing in this case looks like? I mean, I know that. I'm just basically saying that as a comic book reader, that was not very exciting. I'm saying that if you really want to build the tension in your story so that the win or the guy's win feels like a win, then you have to give us more than just boom, one shot, the guy's down. And she's arguing with me on this, to the point where I'm just kind of like, God, I ought to just cancel my freaking order for Inglorious Rex #3 at this point. If this is the kind of, reception I'm going to get as far as the criticism goes. But I'm just basically saying, hey, this is not exciting. For one thing, it's not exciting to see a splash page of a guy's, pretty bland face as it is. I mean, the guy's pretty much, Peter Parker looking, so indistinguishable from pretty much any other brown-haired white guy. And what exactly is it that needed to be said in that particular scene? I mean, it's not revelatory, it's not impactful. I'm just basically saying, look, here's where the advice I would give you, and I got pushed back on so hard, and I didn't take it personally, but at the same time, I kept thinking to myself, what, how is this not familiar? And I have to think what it must have been like for Eric July back in those early days when the reviews of ISOM were first starting to come in, and he was starting to get these critiques thrown his way. And some of them were completely unfair because they were from people who didn't read the book at all. They just took a couple of looks at the art and they said, oh, well, this book's going to suck. And then they had to read it, and then they found problems that were obviously there, and then he's having to answer their accusations in a public forum, and that's where I feel like mistakes were made on both sides. Because when you receive that kind of criticism, I know I feel it. I think it's clear that Shane's wife Yanzi felt it because she worked on Inglorious Rex #1 as well as both, I think, co-writer and inker. You get that initial feeling of resistance, like no, I did everything right. The problem must be with you somewhere. And unfortunately, with Eric and the way he did the whole monetize your haters segment and the way that he kept taking on this criticism in public, and how people like us were also ready and willing to dish it out to him in public, I feel like I have to wonder if that just basically calcified his stance about his books, where he became resistant to criticism on account to the fact that we were trying to deliver that criticism neither in the right spirit nor in the right forum. Because I think, as he said, and in some points, is like, why would you not, if you, and I remember him saying this at some point, if you really wanted to help me improve, why would you take this public? Why would you not communicate your concerns to me in private so that I would have a mean, or the opportunity to digest them in that way, behind the scenes as opposed to out in front of everybody? And the same thing, I think the same thing applied to the instances where I was receiving criticism and where Yanji was receiving the criticism I was giving, that there is that initial first push to say, no, there's nothing wrong with the book. There's nothing wrong with the book. And then to just have to double down on that over and over again because people keep attacking. Now, I mean, to be fair, he was inviting the attacks at some point by having the whole monetize your haters thing going. But I remember being on that show because I was one of the haters that he monetized at one time, and telling him, it's like, well, here's a lettering fail, here's a coloring fail. And, even just saying it like that, instead of saying, well, here's a part where the coloring, could have been improved, or here's a part where I don't think the lettering is consistent with what you actually wanted the person to say. There were ways of delivering the critique that I think a lot of us opted not for, that we could have been nicer about it. And part of the problem was the forum really didn't allow for that. I mean, when you're on a show called Monetize Your Hater, you feel like you've got to take the role of a hater. And if you don't take the role of a hater, are you giving him the show that he even wants? it would have been different if it had been like, monetize your critique, or give your honest review or something like that. And then he would basically say, okay, well, as long as you're being honest about what it is you're seeing and about what it is you're feeling when you're reading the book, that's one thing. And I just feel like, because I feel like I contributed to it too, in that whole segment. I even did a video after I had been on his show, admitting to the fact that I never said anything that I liked about ISOM #1. Because it just didn't seem like that was the place or the time to do it. But in fact, there were things I liked about the book. But when you're on there as a hater, how do you tell someone that you actually liked certain portions of it? It's almost like that's contrary to what you want to do. So I think there's a way in which he set himself up for that kind of critique, thinking that oh, none of this critique is going to be valid. It's all going to be crazy people, but also putting himself in a position where he's having to deny the valid as well as the invalid criticism in terms of just and by invalid criticism I mean the people who are just completely out of their minds in terms of feeling like there were problems that weren't problems. Which ironically, Chuck Dixon was one of those, because he actually told Eric July, I think that you should have had Alpha Core and Yaira communicate more during that fight scene. I was just like, no, that was actually fine. So yeah, that's kind of the feeling that I get, and it reminds me of I don't know if anybody out there follows Jordan Peterson on Twitter, and Jordan Peterson just has a complete hate boner on for Justin Trudeau. I mean, the guy, he can't stand Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And I keep looking at all the barbs that Jordan Peterson shoots Trudeau's way, to the point where I keep thinking that, if I were Trudeau, I don't know if I'd ever want to take any of this advice from you. It's clear that you have such a negative attitude towards me. Why would I ever accept anything from you, even if it is an honest critique? And it makes me feel like, maybe that's what happened during the early days of the Rippaverse, where Eric July just kind of had to adopt an attitude where he could do no wrong, because otherwise he was just going to get flayed open on his own programs over and over again. I don't know. I can't help feeling a little bit responsible for creating the monster. I don't know. Let's see. What do we got so far? Andy R says, as a pure art and story junkie, to me personally, it seems like a lot of misplaced energy. I get that he made a big impact and got a lot of cash, but man. Verbena 208 says, I don't think we can shoulder the blame in Eric's case. Most of us started respectfully disagreeing with him and got hit with a lot of unearned vitriol for it. Yeah. Andy R says, man, it was just endless drama from a boring comic, and I read it. I think it's also a gut punch to creators who can't even get people to read their stuff, and there's 1,000 reviews on ISOM saying the same variation of criticism, but that's the market. Andrew Rowland with $20 says, now, I never read Inglorious Rex, but based on your story, I feel the story should primarily focus on the MMA sport of the story, and then maybe bring the alien invasion much later on when there's nothing else to do. Yeah, I kind of felt a little bit. I felt different about that, and I if you watch my review on that, you'll know that at the end I basically talk about the fact that the scope of things for the world and the problem that the world is facing with regard to monsters inhabiting it is such a huge problem that it makes the whole conflict that we've just seen seem so small. that I feel like it diminished the impact of everything that we had just been through, to then later learn that Earth was in this such a dire state. Um, that was something that I feel it would have been better to flip the script and say, okay, hey, to give us a couple boxes of exposition saying, how the world got into this terrible state, and then, here in this sanctum where humanity still survives and thrives, then we have this mini drama taking place, and then we can at least manage our expectations down to the scope that is more appropriate. Becky Xavier says, yeah, because EVS is somewhat responsible. Oh, yeah, that's the thing is like, there's no way that Eric July is going to take any criticism from EVS whatsoever, because now he's like, EVS is like Jordan Peterson to Eric July's Trudeau. I mean, he's just taking so many shots at Eric July at every at every possible EFAP opportunity, that I mean, I get to the point where I'm watching Ethan like make a comment on every damn line that Eric July says, and I'm just like, God, dude, shut up! Just we know you hate him. We know. All right, you don't have to take all of these digs at him. Yeah, it winds up being quite an obnoxious festival of just vitriol that gets spilled out in those trash casts. I still love them. I watch the trash casts. I'm more interested in those than I am in any of the Comicsgate King stuff these days. But goodness gracious, I mean, it just gets to the point where I'm saying, look, give the poor guy a chance. Even if he fails, I mean, just give the poor guy a chance at least. Uh let's see. Beta 208 says, yeah, not an EVS fan. I mean, I'm an EVS fan, but I mean, he gets so hyper negative. You can't be afraid of criticism or you'll never improve. You have to step back and look at your work objectively. Yeah, that can be hard to do. And that's why it kind of opened my eyes some when I realized how much I was pushing back against the criticism that was being given to the stuff that I'd written. That I was like, oh, what if this is like the natural knee jerk reaction of just like any author out there, is to just basically say, no, I think the problem is your interpretation of it, and only then, once you've been exposed to the idea and you've been allowed to gel on it for some amount of time, and then you kind of turn and look from the other person's eyes and say, yeah, I can kind of see how that could be the case. And realize, hopefully it's not going to take too much to have to change things in such a way that makes things clearer. Because that's always a concern too, is like, how far do I have to go in order to make this something better? Run the Point Night says, many artists struggle with criticism, but Eric was a critic turned artist, so it was all the more ironic that he was so sensitive to criticism. That is true. Andrew Rowland says, Mike critiqued my comic and I thanked him for the review, even though he had somewhat negative things to say about it. I kept being good sport about it. And you were one of the brave ones who came to me asking for the critique in the first place, and even said, go ahead and do a video on it. I'm like, all right. but yeah, I mean, I just admired your fortitude for that. Vermina 208 says, good on you. That's the mark of a good writer. Becky Xavier says, that's fine. True. Run the point, or Becky Xavier's replying to Run the Point Night. True, he's a mess. Andrew Rowland said, I'm getting very tired of the EFAPing on Eric July. Comes to show how much he lives in their heads. Yeah, but at the same time, you got to realize how much money Ethan's making off of that. I mean, that is the reason he does it, is because he's been incentivized to very, very strongly. And plus, he gets to put his stuff on sale and sell extra toys and extra comics. So he does it for a reason. I mean, if he wasn't making money off of it, he wouldn't be doing it. Andrew Rowland says, I'm also not a fan of either EVS or Eric July. Royston S. Bailey says, EVS claims that Eric July threatened him, which was why he began his jihad against Rippaverse and Eric. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I guess there's grounds for. I mean, the AI seems to agree that the night letter did indeed seem to be a night letter. Uh, yeah, I that was one of those things that I was just kind of like, yeah, take it with a grain of salt. You know, just basically don't. Well, actually, I did a whole video on that the EBS versus Eric July and commented on Eric July's moral system of anarcho-capitalism and the idea of negotiated morality, et cetera, et cetera. And so, if anyone's interested in taking a look at that, I think it's one of my more popular ones, but I can't remember how high that one got in the view count. Backing Xavier says same with EBS, same. Yeah, Royston S. Bailey says EBS is making $3,000 like every trash cast from super chats. I mean, yeah, we're basically. Can you imagine if he was like plugging all that money into Bitcoin? How much money he could probably have at the end of the decade? Oh God. Becky Xavier says that's true, but that still doesn't mean Eric July is just as bad and also worse. Royston Bailey says, well, either EVS is telling the truth, those messages exist, or they don't, the threatening messages. Yeah, go back and look at my video. Oh, let's see, what is it called? EVS? Is that what it's called? I've got a video out there called EVS versus Rippa. Did EVS overreact? And that's it's about 25 minutes long, but I basically explained the whole situation there as best as I could figure it out. I looked at it as kind of being like, well, he's just basically saying that, he's offering you a level of protection now from the people who want to attack you, but if you're not going to give him that same level of protection on your show, he's not going to feel obligated to offer that same level of protection back. And you could look at that as being an attack. You could also just look at it as being like, look, I want us to be treating each other the same. But by then, already there were, disagreements looming between the two on account of Eric's unwillingness to take criticism. But again, like I'm saying, is like you gotta at some point be able to give the criticism in such a way that it's not just a dagger to the heart every single time. Primarial says, or primarial, okay, well, I've said it enough times. The major problem with a lot of Eric's critique was the intention. They didn't want him to improve. They wanted him to disappear. EVS proves that's still the goal. Well, it definitely is now. I mean, at this point, and certainly Dick Masterson was basically, being a dick at the time and saying, oh, here's all these tremendous things of what's wrong with the story, when actually there really wasn't that much that I found valid in that. I've got a video myself on Dick Masterson's critique, and it's like I only found like 3 things in that whole critique that seemed valid to me. Everything else just seemed overblown. Like, if you read the book and actually paid attention to what was going on in the book, then you probably would have seen some of these things, or at least maybe if you chatted to somebody who had also read it, that maybe they would have told you. But I really didn't find much valuable in that critique at all, except for 3 good points. And for EBS to keep saying that, oh, that was really good, that was all really valid. It's like, no, not really. I mean, ISOM number 1, for all of its flaws, was not a terrible story. It was just, it was not a whole story, which is part of the reason that people were upset with it, is because they wanted it to be a complete story with beginning, middle, and end in that volume, even though it said right on the spine of the book, ill-advised part one. And yes, there are ways that you can, make part one into a complete story and still have a part two later on. But, when you're dealing with somebody who's a new author like Eric July, I think expecting that kind of level from him is, you know, it's something where I can forgive that. I can forgive the bad. I can forgive the abrupt ending and the fact that the whole story has not been told yet, given that you've at least shown me up front that this is part one of a story. Now, Gooding the Polymath, on the other hand, is a whole other matter. I mean, they made that out to be a complete book. It is not a complete book. I mean, I still maintain that if you look at Gooding the Polymath, what you've got is half of a story. And what they plan to do with the other half of the story, I have no idea. I think they might have actually tried. Yeah, this is going a bit far afield, but it makes me wonder whether or not they actually are trying to screw Mike Barron in that they could take his one script and turn it into two books, and he only get paid for his writing, one thing. I don't know. I hope that doesn't turn out to be the case, but I just don't. I don't put anything past them. So that's basically that's basically what I had to say as far as were we too hard on Eric July, and the reason I bring it up is because ideally he would be able to soften and take criticism, but the only way that that's going to happen is if we soften the delivery as well. There's no way that we can set ourselves up to be enemies of him, and especially the way that Ethan Van Sciver has done, and what Shane Davis is getting ready has about crossed the threshold of doing, which is to just basically declare themselves enemies, and then at that point, yeah, why would he take any advice from them, even if it winds up being good advice, because you've got just this whole attitude of your stuff sucks, your stuff sucks, your stuff sucks, your stuff sucks. And any capitulation to any of the ideas that are being expressed in between the lines of your stuff sucks and here's why would wind up looking like you're having to accept the whole message of yeah my stuff sucks, but only a little bit. It only sucks a little bit. Well, that's not the way anybody wants to market their stuff. I mean, you have to be a promoter, and while you don't have to go so far as to say, my stuff is the best stuff ever, and look how much money I made, and that's the proof, as if the quality and the money haul were in any way related. I don't know how we're supposed to expect Eric July to actually take criticism and get better unless there is a demonstrable level of care for his feelings in the matter. How else do you tell someone? I mean, if you were just basically face to face with someone telling them that their story was bad, I mean, you'd find some way to couch that in more delicate terms. You wouldn't just be like, well, this is a load of crap. You would find some way to tell that person what you honestly feel, and yet salvage, no pun intended, some measure of dignity on their part. To say, well, you gave it a good try. It's not perfect, but here are the places where I think you could actually improve. And I'd like to think that it's not too late for the Rippaverse, that it's not too late for Eric July to do that kind of turn, not a 180, but at least a 90, and say, okay, well, what we're doing is really not up to standard, and it needs to be up to standard, and up to standard in such a way that, he understands what the standards are. The whole 3D asset controversy, I'm just kind of like, whatever. As long as your art tells the story, you're doing your job. Uh, Even if all you're doing is laying down the pictures and putting it through the line art render or whatever the hell it is that they have to do for that. It's like, tells the story, and if it tells the story, you've done your job. So knowing what standards to adhere to, knowing what's a problem, knowing what's not. I mean, these are all the things that a good editor can tell you. But you have to have a good editor on your staff. And right now, it doesn't appear to me like Rippaverse does have a good editor anywhere near their staff because of just the things that I keep seeing in these freaking books. When I see dialogue that's just runaway vapidity like you see in Yaira, when you see inconsistent character presentations like you see in Yaira and Alpha Core #1, when you see half stories being told like in Gooding the Polymath, there just doesn't seem to be that kind of editorial quality control that a comic book company needs in order to move forward and deliver quality product to the readers. But how do you get that across to them? How do you do that unless you're willing to actually be on his side and in his corner and pointing out to him, here's what's going wrong, and here's how you can correct it. I mean, I'm just at the point where I've seen so much of a train wreck coming out of that company that I don't even feel like throwing the signal or warning oncoming traffic anymore. It's like how do you just keep steamrolling right ahead when you've got these issues? Or maybe he doesn't know he's got these issues. I don't know, but he needs somebody around who's going to be able to tell him that he's got these issues. Oh, goodness gracious. Andrew Rowland says, my problem with ISOM was that it didn't stick with ISOM. Bringing in the IRA so early on didn't feel deserved. That kind of thing is something you would do if the franchise had been around for a long time. Yeah, but he made it clear at the beginning that he was using ISOM #1 as a springboard for other characters. So, and just the fact that he didn't bring them in for much. I mean, she had, of course, there was the 3-page prologue, which pertained more to her than to ISOM, and then there was 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of Yaira versus Alpha Core, and then you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think, pages of Yaira versus Avery. In a 90-something page book, that's only a sixth of the book. And some of that interaction was with the main character. I just can't. I don't really feel like faulting him for that. And besides, it allowed us to get a look at Yaira and Alpha Core, and realize that these were going to be characters that were going to spin out of the universe or the Rippaverse going forward, and get our appetites whetted for more than just what we were seeing in ISOM. I actually think that there could have been more involvement among them, but that was not the direction which he chose to go with it. He kind of broadened things out enough to show you the universe that was out there, and then closed things back down to the main story, which I think that was probably good marketing overall. Did he need to do it again with ISOM #2 and just go in the same direction of broadening things out there? I don't think so. I think ill-advised #2 probably should have wrapped up the entire Darren arc, and then ISOM #3 could have been the next springboard issue. But yeah, I mean, as far as ISOM #1 goes, I can't fault him for wanting to promote his characters in book, because that was part of the misstated purpose with it. Andrew Rowland says, I also don't like how everyone is treating Eric like he committed the greatest crime in the universe. It should have stopped at, well, you don't like our critique, so I'll stop buying. Yeah, uh, the reason it didn't though is that, and the reason that I guess it hasn't on even my part is that we really did want the books to get better. I mean, I think anybody who read ISOM #1 and saw that it could be a better book wanted it to be a better book, with ISOM #2, and just wanted to be able to show them, like, look, when you're doing ISOM #2, realize that there were these problems with ISOM #1, and don't make the same mistakes again with ISOM #2. Improve on the book so that we can, really recommend it out there to people. Because I think largely the people who were offering criticism were on his side. I mean, Dick Masterson wasn't, but even Ethan would have been on his side at that point and saying, "Look, take the critique for what it is. This is ammunition you can put in your arsenal that you can use to write better stories." And that's what we want to see. We don't want this massive explosion of attention given to the independent comic space to result in a whole bunch of people going in saying, "Well, this is crap. Is this really what we can expect from the independent comic space? Then why does anybody even bother with the independent comic space?" That, I think, has been the major fear all along, is feeling like Rippaverse's reputation is going to rub off on everybody else in the independent comic space, fair or not. If this is the #1 comic and this is crap, what is everybody else doing? And I think that is the primary fear that is generating all the rage toward Rippaverse. It's like, stop being the banner for this movement that we have, when we need this movement to succeed, and what you are doing with it is not helping us succeed. It's more pointing us towards, or more pointing people towards an attitude toward independent comics that we don't want shared with us. Let's see. Baki Xavier says, my problem is that ISOM is very similar to Phoenix Jones with bits of kick-ass where it doesn't feel original at all. I haven't read Phoenix Jones, so I don't know about that. And let's see, Run the Point Night. Trashcast is fascinating. It has revealed so much about both Eric and EVS. Yeah. Vermana 208, he wouldn't listen even if you did warn him. He has an arrogant streak and it's costing him. Drew Powell says, I hate it when Comicsgate creators like Eric July brags about making millions of dollars through his comic. That doesn't mean it's a success. Yeah, that was one of the things that I really had to harp on over and over again, was the fact that the people who paid for ISOM #1 knew nothing of its quality. The only indications of quality that they had was just a couple of unlettered preview pages. If you're buying a book based on a couple of unlettered preview pages, you're just rolling the dice. You have no idea what the quality of the book's going to be. And it wasn't until I saw some lettered pages that I was like, okay, well, this is at least piquing my interest to the point where I want to go ahead and pick up a copy now. So yeah, there's that quality and revenue disconnect there. Where the quality really shows is in the drop off in revenue from one book to the next, and the drop off in the number of purchasers from one book to the next. That's how you know when you have a quality issue. You have a quality issue when you can't retain your customers. And from one Rippaverse to the next, or from one Rippaverse book to the next, so far, and I don't count the Yaira campaign on account of its dropping that statue at the last minute to buff up the numbers. you've had this constant decline in the number of purchasers. And now you can't even see it anymore on their website, so that's kind of that's a piece of information that's hidden now. But I'm trying to like make kind of random guesstimates in terms of Ripazine numbers. How many people are actually buying just the Ripazine and want to see the previews of stuff that's going to be coming out in the near future. I don't know. I mean, I really wish number of purchasers was something that he put on the website so that we could see. Because I don't know if the fact that he's made $100,000 off of Ripazine #2 means that he sold a lot of books or that he sold a lot of posters. How would I know? There are two different prices for the books, and the special editions and the regular editions. Those are all being counted in. Probably the CGC issues are being counted in as well. Uh, there's no way to get good stats anymore. Is basically what I'm saying. Okay, what do we got here? Backing Xavier said Eric is Rippaverse, not Comicsgate, but you're not wrong. Eric is worse than EVS, I should say, both because they are, but Eric just can't handle the heat. Real Nerdy Review says I'm still not interested in any comic but ISOM 3. Yeah, and I would like to see Norfolka someday, but oh god. Uh, I get chills just thinking about like how terrible that could wind up becoming. Drew Powell, and also he doesn't focus one continuity. Well, he doesn't focus on continuity of a character's story, and just randomly shoehorns in other characters like Yaira and Alpha Core in the same universe instead of making them independent. Well, that they're in the same universe, I mean, it actually works to his benefit because you want ISOM to sell Yaira, you want Yaira to sell ISOM, you want Alpha Core to sell both Yaira and ISOM. You do want your comics to sell one another. So there's no problem with having them in the same universe. Andrew Rowland says, I do think the community is too Puritan with their creators. They have this attitude that if your first book is not good enough, then you're unworthy and should be banished from the community. I mean, yeah, I mean, there is the fact that Eric was holding out this comic book ISOM #1 as being the cure for what ails the people who want just good comics, and yet when you get it and you read it and you realize this is not as good as it should have been before seeing print, then the resentment is understandable. It's like he overpromised and underdelivered. Let's see. Honorary A says Phoenix Jones is the real life crime fighter out in Seattle. Oh my gosh. Drew Powell says, I agree. Eric will soon stress himself out on releasing other comics in the same continuities instead of focusing on releasing ISOM 3 for the main story. God, ISOM 3 needs to come out so badly. Let's see. Andy R says, all right, Mike, headed out. Interesting stream. Looking forward to Dino King and, of course, selfishly, my book. Yes, I will. That will be coming up next after Dino King, as I will actually be reviewing Cargo parts 1 and 2, which I actually have an editor's credit on. So thanks for joining around the stream. Let's see. Andy R says to Andrew Rowland, I hope that's not the case. I'm just serializing a long format story. My first book is just intros, as a lot of new guys are. Yeah, but yours is good. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I've had the chance to read it since, and the first couple of issues. I mean, there is the fact of, okay, now I think if I'm trying to remember back to what I read of Cargo #3, and trying to remember how much was how much of both stories were continued on from. So I think that yeah, the see I liked the intro in Cargo. Now I already told you about the 2-page introduction where I was like, oh, this actually spoils a little bit, and it also makes us wonder where is all the action in all of this. And well, just we'll leave it. We'll leave it for the video that I actually do on Cargo. But yes, I will be doing that. But Cargo is a good book. It is. See, Verbatis 208 says the characters don't stand on their own enough to whet people's appetite for other characters. I guess you're talking about the Rippaverse characters there, and yeah, I mean the appetite for other characters really just comes from the starvation that a lot of readers have been feeling on account of not having the Marvel and DC stuff of their childhood to go back to. Um, Marvel and DC, yeah, they just aren't doing the job anymore, and so it would be nice if the Rippaverse characters were able to fill that niche, but right now they're just too threadbare and inconsistent to accomplish that. The Sammy Jenkins experience. Eric's CGC sale is showing his hardcore buying audience is also shrinking. He's only moved just over 200 of ISOM #1 cover A CGC, even less of the others. He may be putting out too much high cost product too quickly for his hardcore base to keep up, or there's waning interest. Sonic Man says Eric July should put himself into the Rippaverse. He should have a comic book titled Eric July #1. And Andy R says, one last question I got to ask Mike. Any interest in manga? It's a whole world of good stories. Yeah, I have, well, of course, Dino King is actually a manga style book. Probably qualifies as manga in and of itself. So there's that. Um, I have seen, I've got some manga. I don't read a whole ton of it because I usually prefer to watch anime than read manga. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not. Like for example, Attack on Titan. If you're not watching the anime, I mean, it's like the manga's not going to do it for you. The manga is just going to be like, okay, I think I understand what all is going on, but until you see the anime, you're not really seeing it as it needs to be seen. Uh, there are and usually the anime I found sticks close enough to the manga that you're getting the same story, like Attack on Titan again, which really that's one of the best animes of all time, and I think they may have left out maybe one scene from uh, from the manga, and the other thing that they did was kind of which it wasn't really that important of a scene, but it does kind of give you a feeling for why things happened at the timing that they happened in some of the earlier episodes. But the other thing was in the very very last episodes, the final chapters, there are scenes that you can see as the credits are playing, and they're given like full page spreads in the final issues of Attack on Titan, and you really should go to those final spreads to see the splash pages and how they are, because you just don't get the same effect from seeing it small scenes when the trailer credits are going by. They screwed that up. So yeah, that was a little bit sad, is that they didn't stick the landing that they really should have on Attack on Titan. I mean, I know that they did everything the best that they could, but not just the final credits, for all of the after credits kind of stuff that went on. Death Note is the best manga I've ever read. I actually own that. I went and I watched all of the anime, and then I went back and I bought the manga, so I have the whole set on that. Let's see. Pacing through the books is great. LMAE. I enjoyed Full Metal Alchemist. Let's see, a neat shonen. Honorary Ace and Death Note is solid. Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah, I do not like Brotherhood, but I do like the original Full Metal Alchemist. Um, Boy, were they lucky that that kid's voice did not change until after the show was done. Because that was part of that's one of the things I don't like about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is you can tell that a girl is doing the boy's voice for Alphonse, whereas in the original Full Metal Alchemist they actually had a young boy doing the part, and they must have been just on pins and needles waiting for his voice to change and just screw everything up, and he wound up keeping his kid voice until all the way through the series, which was a good thing. But I did enjoy Full Metal Alchemist. That was one of the better ones. Okay, it is 2 hours and 5 minutes. Good bloody lord! I liked Vinland Saga. Very good drama. I don't know any. I think I've heard of that one, but for some reason, I'll take a look maybe at the first episode and see. I know BTM Reviews was recommending Overlord, and I watched a couple episodes of that, but it just didn't do it for me. I watched another show called Go Go Loser Ranger, and it was an interesting concept, but again, fell flat after an episode or two. Uh, I also tried the one that time I was reincarnated as a slime. That was kind of it was cute, but I just really yeah, I've seen so much. I mean, that's part of the problem. Is like after 40 plus years of watching cartoons and including anime, and because my anime goes all the way back to probably Showtime when they had these anime movies from Japan, like Star. Oh, what was it? Star Blazers or uh, Dangard Ace, Guy King, Space Gateers. They were like really old Showtime movies. That Grandizer was another one. Uh, I was just head over heels for those kinds of giant robot movies. And then, of course, you had Robotech, where you had those three different Robotech series, Macross, and these other ones, uh, all strung together, and they kind of made a whole story out of it. The American version was definitely better in that regard. Um, yeah, there were so many things that I've already seen that it's hard for me to invest in stuff that's not like really seriously original. So I'll take a look at that Vinland Saga one just to see what it's like. But yeah, it's hard to hook me these days. Andy R says thoughts on Evangelion would be interesting for sure. I tried watching that and I just couldn't get into it. What I really would like to see is the original Mobile Suit Gundam episodes. I saw the movie adaptations where they had four Mobile Suit Gundam movies that like took various portions of the TV series and blended them all in together to be like movies. But I want to see the original series as it was, and all really, I'd love to. If there was a way where I could just watch all of the Mobile Suit Gundam stuff and not have it take up like 80 years of my life. I would love to see that because that was where I learned one of the best techniques that there is, and this was actually something I recommended for Cargo, which Andy R is doing, was to make it so that you have when you have characters who are going to come into conflict, make it so that you care about both sides of the conflict. Make it so that you care about both your hero characters and your villain characters. In fact, make it just like you've got hero characters on both sides, so that when they eventually come into contact and people start dying, you are going to be affected no matter what. In fact, you are going to start dreading the inevitable conflict that's coming. Those are the kinds of things where I think really the Gundam series shines, because they really try to present both the hero quote heroes and villains as human beings who are just have different motivations. And when those motivations come into conflict, it brings the people into conflict, death ensues, and all of a sudden it's like, I can't believe that just happened. And there's no escaping. Uh, you're going to get affected no matter what, and you just can't escape. Let's see. Yeah, now people are just starting to throw out all of these different things. I got to tell you, people. I mean, I've got a backlog already as far as anime goes. I got to see Doctor Stone season 2, Stone Wars. Been waiting on that for a long time. I do want to give another watch to Tokyo Ghoul, Kill la Kill. Let's see, what else do I have lined up? My Hero Academia, of course. I watched several seasons of that. And then One Piece. I got to at least try One Piece. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff that's already on my plate, so don't bother trying to get me hooked on too much. Oh, it's time to go. Yeah, it's 2 hours and 10 minutes. My voice is about shot, and I'm gonna go ahead and pack it in at this point. So thanks to everybody who stuck around for the long haul and listened to me ramble for like a full hour before I even got to my topic. But that's the way it goes sometimes. Thanks so much to everybody who donated super chats. Just all of the great all of the great funding. Let's give a shout outs to Low Watermark, Andrew Rowland, Honorary A, and Andy R for all of your kind donations. I appreciate those, and I will definitely use that towards the one day promised new laptop and microphone. And I know Low Watermark is like dying to see me finally get a new microphone. So let's see. Honorary A says, last question: are you still able to review some completed panels for the project that I'm working on? Yeah, go if you haven't already. Go over to gab.com, set up an ID there, and I'm there at I guess it's @ Michael Partika. But you can find me there, and there's also a comics forum out there, so you can also look for me in that. But go over there and follow me. I can follow you back, and then we should be able to chat after that. So the weird thing about Gab is that, for direct messaging back and forth to do chats, you have to be like mutual followers of each other. So all right. Have a good night. Yep. Have a good night, everybody. I am going to get something to drink, because good Lord, my throat's dry at this point. I honestly was starting to worry that I wasn't even going to be able to make it through this, because like halfway through, I'm like, I think I'm starting to talk like this, and I still haven't gotten to my main topic yet. So appreciate everybody who's been diligently staying the course. Thanks, everybody, and good night.